After beating Sombron, he takes his loss better than most Fire Emblem antagonists and accepts he may never see the Emblem of Foundations again. And all that he might have wanted was someone that's not from Elyos to acknowledge his growth during exile. Thus he shall only be remembered as a simple evil that's been slain. That said, Alear offers mercy, encouraging Sombron to try invoking the Emblem of Foundations one last time, and it ends up being successful, and Sombron peacefully engages away with them to the great beyond. All that's left is to shut down the portal, and as it closes, Marth starts to slowly disappear, and both he and Alear thank each other for the journey and comradeship, and the former affirms that the latter will carry Lumera's and the other emblems' legacy well. From the most recent to the first, each emblem gives their farewell before disappearing, with Marth getting an extended moment to remind Alear that he is family to the rest of the emblems, and hopes he remembers them for when they next meet. Alear then thanks Marth for sticking with us till the end. After all that, we're presented with my battle data for this playthrough, and as that and the character epilogue scroll by, I'd like to give my thoughts on Fire Emblem Engage. Simply put, my opinion is the same as most other people's, where the story and writing is lacking, but the gameplay is fantastic. Overall, I enjoyed it more than I was expecting. And just to keep this video short, here are my bullet point opinions that I thought of before recording this script. Story and writing. Simple plot would be okay if time was given to fleshing plot points or character dynamics. Example, Lumera's Chapter 3 death. She needed a lot more development with Alear. Future Prinny here. Spoiler warning for Fire Emblem Path of Radiance Chapter 8 incoming. Skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear it. Okay, bye. An example from a previous Fire Emblem game that I thought worked well in this regard is Grail from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. That at least had 7 chapters in between the first and when Grail died, and Grail's death also had an impact on way more than just Ike in that game. Not only that, the first chapter was Ike training with Grail, then a few chapters happened in between before Grail kicks the bucket to the Black Knight. Another example I give is how the Vale stole the rings in Chapter 10. She just somehow has them after Alear gets distracted by the 4 hounds when they make their appearance. Oh, and every single recruitable character. There's barely any development outside of support conversations. And just because you have an external system to flesh out characters, doesn't excuse you from making sure their development in the main story be non-existent. Recruitable royals contribute almost nothing of value after going through their territories, even though they still get main story screen time. Despite the fact I didn't like her, Hortensia had the best main story development, even without having seen her support conversations. And even though the story has its high points, they only hit hard because everything around those moments is pretty abysmal. Now for the gameplay. It's the best thing about Engage. Arguably, it's the best in the series. The game balance is impeccable on maddening. The difficulty curve is smooth, with a spike in Chapter 10 and some paralogs if you do them immediately, then the difficulty dips from about Chapter 23 onwards. Granted, this is when I really started leaning into skill inheritance. Enemy positions and reinforcements are well curated to nudge your actions and keep battles engaging. Despite my complaints at times, no battle felt unfair. The weapon triangles change and introduction of the break mechanic emboldens player phase actions. Though it's easy to ignore later in the game, I'd take it over the accuracy penalties or boons from prior entries. Most of the bosses being aggressive is both a good and bad. Good in that they can keep the tension if they're threatening, but on the other, you can easily bait them out of their beneficial tiles and swarm them safely. Early game characters are easily outshone by later recruits and fall off way too fast. As for the art and presentation, the game looks beautiful. The art style for the landscapes are what I'd expect the GBA games to look like if they were in 3D. Character designs on the other hand are a hit or miss. On my notes I have that Hortensia looks so much like a clown that you can't tell she's an illusion princess from a glance. The fur on Merrin's outfit makes it seem like she should be illusion, or at least live near there. And then there's the stupid stars on Yunaka's hair. Simply that. Most cutscenes portray events so poorly, especially in the support conversations, that dialogue does a lot of telling with no showing. Granted, this has been a weakness of Fire Emblem for a long time. Combat animations are sublime, and they flow so well, especially something like countering on an opponent's missed attack, where it's instantaneous, the follow-up, usually anyway. As for the music, the soundtrack's amazing, mostly the map and battle tracks, where I'd say they're usually forgettable with previous Fire Emblem games, but the ones in Engage in general really highlights the map well, or they are catchy as all heck. And I give special mentions to the following: Emblem Engage, the opening song, Tear Streaked and its battle version from Chapter 10, Bright Sandstorm for some Soul maps. This was the particular track that really got my attention for the soundtrack as a whole. All the remixes in the Emblem Paralogs. There are a few misses, but there's more good than bad, and the examples I list for that are Trial of the Academy and Trial of the Emblems for Byleth and Marth's Paralog respectively. Keeper of History Frenzy, which is the Illusia boss theme, Distorted Flash of Light and its Frenzy version, as well as Goddess in Shadow Frenzy for the map and battle theme plus boss theme for Chapter 25. Then there's also Last Engage Prayer-Incantation, the final map music for Chapter 26. It's no orchestral epic like Twilight of the Gods from Shadows of Valentia or God-Shattering Star from the Golden Deer route of Three Houses, but it does give the feeling of the final battle being one last hurrah before you finish the game, and I think it fits quite well. And that's what I quickly came up with as I was writing this script. I had a lot better to say about this game than I thought I would. At the very least, I would never call Engage the worst Fire Emblem game. Anyways, here's some stats that I collated about my playthrough, starting with a collage of all the permanent casualties and where they died. Chapters where I've used the time crystal, including game overs, the most. Chapters with the most overall casualties. Characters who've died the most. Here's a list of my favourite maps, my favourite characters, and my favourite emblems. With all that out of the way, it's now Alir's coronation day, and he futilely attempts to summon Marth before being called by the rest of the royals, including Ivy's ghost and Vale, to hurry up and get changed. Once they leave, all the emblem rings shine brightly, with Marth giving one last message that our bonds can be reforged by only saying, Engage. Reloading the clear file grants numerous rewards and puts us back to the state before the final chapter. To cap off my playthrough, I jump back into it so I can see the bad ending, where I first give myself the opportunity to one-turn Phase 1 by warping up Alir, Merrin, Panette, Ivy and Seedal, Bond blasting Revival Stone 1, twin striking and throwing a knife onto Stone 2, and then just smacking Sombron normally after a Goddess dance. On Phase 2, I burn all the Time Crystal charges on menial moves, then I keep ramming Alir onto Sombron until he falls. Alir then wakes up to Sombron happily telling him all his friends are dead, before directing our attention to an older evil Vale, who's clearly put too much makeup on, wearing Alir's emblem ring, and there's a mirror behind her to clearly show Alir that he has either reverted to his fellow dragon self, or that he's now an invoked emblem. Regardless, he despairs while Sombron laughs maniacally at the situation. That marks the end of my Fire Emblem Engage playthrough. Thank you to all of you who've watched my first edited series on this channel. This project was more for me to experiment with making edited content on a somewhat consistent basis, as well as improving my editing skills in general, and I got to say, I both enjoyed and hated it at the same time. I was supposed to have done all this within the last year, but with the way I decided to format these videos as well as going through the editing process, it didn't lend to getting a video completed each week as I initially planned, and it took a while for me to work on these videos consistently, though I'm quite proud of how it's all turned out. Now that I'm done, I'm not likely going to do a series like this again, at least in this format, and more likely I'll take my time with edited works. Maybe doing one-shots of games, or just resorting to clipping my live streams. I'll need to think about it. That said, I do have an idea on what my next two video projects are, and I can see them taking a month or two each, no promises here. And they're very different to what I've shown on this channel thus far. Well, that's it for now. Thank you everyone for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Take care of yourselves, and have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon. Bye!